driver and a mechanic. He went on to become an insurance salesman, and then he became a district manager and went back to school, and, you know, real up from the bootstraps kind of guy. You hear so much about abuse these days, but in the whole 44 years that I've been alive, I never heard my father say a cross word to my mom, never saw us raise his hand, never saw him drunk, saw him have a few drinks and sing a few songs, but never saw him drunk, saw him get mad at me and my brother. He had a pretty good temper. You know, I'll tell you two stories about it. I'll tell you about the first time and the last time I saw my dad lose his temper. The first time I was 5 years old, he just built a flagstone patio. My dad was pretty handy, you know, laying all the flags on the cement, and we went out and he bought one of those big rotisseries, you know, the one where you stick the rod through the roast beef, you know. About a 5-pound roast beef, 5 or 6 pound. He's going to cook this thing up for all the neighbors. Invites all the neighbors over, and the roast beef takes about 4 hours. And they're all inside, and I'm outside as a kid, you know, trying to touch the roast beef. You know. Anyway, I couldn't reach the roast beef, so I took a comb out of my pocket, a little ace comb, and I was trying to stick it in the meat, you know, and go. Anyway, my mom had tied the roast beef up with string, you know. Anyway, my comb got caught in the string and melted over the whole roast beef. So, you know, when the comb got caught, I couldn't reach it, and I went, oh, and I just walked away, you know. So about 4 hours later, and I never saw my dad this mad. We sit down to eat. My father, oh, boy, look at that roast beef. I'm telling you, I don't know, he paid like a ton of dough for this roast beef. And he starts carving it, you know, and, oh, look, everybody's sitting there with their forks waiting to eat. And all of a sudden, clang, this big piece of melted plastic falls off the roast beef, and it's all raw underneath. My father goes, what the hell is this? What kind of meat is this? I said, oh, that's my comb, Dad. I melted it on the roast beef. My dad picked it up like a football. What? Threw it into the yard. About 5 dogs from the neighborhood tear the roast beef apart. And I'm sitting there. Everybody looking at my father said, and now I'm putting you on the rotisserie. And I ran up. That was the first time I saw him. The last time I saw him get mad, he was in the hospital. He didn't like being in the hospital. You know, he was not comfortable with it. And I flew to Boston without telling him. I flew to Boston. I went to the hospital. I said, doctor, give me a doctor's outfit. And I put on the doctor's outfit, you know, and I put on the mask and the hat and these stupid glasses and I had a big clipboard. And I went into his room and I said, you're Angelo Leno? I said, yeah, that's right. He goes, yeah, I know who you are. We get a lot of guys in here like you. He goes, what do you mean a lot of guys like me? He says, I don't like your attitude. So I know guys like you looking for a free meal and a bed, never worked a day in their life. Before I finish, he leaps up and he's got me by the throat. I go, Dad, don't kill me, Pop. And we had a pretty good laugh over that. Now, again, and the whole time I knew my dad, as I said, he was a street kid. He grew up in New York City. I never heard him say an ethnic slur. I never heard him say a racial slur, anti-Semitic slur. When my dad worked for the insurance company. He went to work for Prudential Insurance Company. He's very proud of that. And he did pretty good in his area. He got to be the top salesman. He said, what's the toughest area to sell? And they said, oh, Harlem. Oh, what, the people there, they don't have any future. You can't sell them any insurance, blah, blah. And my dad never believed that kind of stuff. When he went up to Harlem, he started knocking on doors. And pretty soon, people started inviting him into his home. And he was having dinner there 2 or 3 nights a week. And he turned it into a tremendous area. So everybody was buying insurance from my dad. And then he went back to his boss and he says, well, what's the next toughest there? And they said, Spanish, Harlem. They didn't even speak English. He went out and he bought these big 78 records that I still have. And he taught himself Spanish, and he went around knocking on doors. And pretty soon he was eating dinner in Spanish people's houses 2 or 3 nights a week. And then about 4 years ago, right before I started this program, I got a letter from a lady in Harlem, and there was an article that Jay Leno, son of an insurance man, Angelo. And she was in her 60s, I guess, and she said when she was a little girl, she wanted to know if the Angelo Leno that came to her house was possibly my dad. And I called her up and we talked, and she told me some of the stories. And my dad only had like 8 stories. And he only told the same 8 jokes over and over. So when she told me the joke, which was Bellman dropped a quarter, I picked it up, had to give him a 50. No, I dropped a quarter, Bellman picked it up, I had to give him a 50-cent tip. That was my father's favorite joke. She told me that joke, and I said, that was my father. And she told me that my dad was the only white person they had ever had in their home, which is the first person as a child. And my dad would bring her gifts and candy and tell her stories. And she said her whole life, from that point on, she always liked Italian people, so she thought they were nice and friendly, and that my dad had made that much of an impression on her. And, you know, you realize there are people who go through life, and you know, they write letters, and they march and they do those things, which is great, you know. And then there are people who just do the right thing. For whatever reason, they don't ask for any reward. You know, my dad never told me this story, this lady did. They just know to do the right thing. And that's why I was very proud of them. You know, if I ever get arrested, and you see me in court, and some lawyer comes out and tries to say, you know, Your Honor, he was brought up wrong. Please, don't believe that, you know. Nobody was brought up righter than I was. You know, when I went through my whole life, at every point, whether it was drugs, or women, or fast cars, you know, my folks are always there just to give you that nudge over on the right side. And whenever I hear that expression that people say, oh, it's lonely at the top, you know, I never knew what they meant. I had no idea what that meant, because at every point along the way, they were always there for me to talk to. Even, you know, 2 years ago when we were going through, oh, is Jay going to get fired? He's going to get replaced. I would call, and my dad would always say, hey, you fight the good fight, John. You just get in there and you fight the good fight. You know, it really is lonely at the top. You have no idea. But we'll fight the good fight, Bob. We'll be back. We'll do some headlines. We'll have some laughs. I just wanted to tell you.